It's a global, like, uniting
Yeah.
against this, and I don't,
It's a global issue, so it has to
really
be a
is.
global action. One country isn't going to do it alone.
and I know it's not gonna be dented right away, but we can start denting it, hammering away.
It's a lack of education just across the entire spectrum.
Yeah.
Like from
At
every
all
level,
levels.
like everyone needs to know the signs, everyone needs to know who to report to, they need to know like it's okay to report it, this is what's gonna happen. Cause I know it's the same way with like child abuse, like people don't wanna report it because they have these misconceptions of what's gonna happen next. Like what's gonna happen to the person that they're like turning in or anything like that.
They
And that's-
automatically assume that the child is going to be removed, but
Yes.
we know as social workers that that's not the go-to.
Yeah, it's the same way with human trafficking. They don't want to butt into something that they think is not their
They don't
issue.
belong, right.
They don't think they're going to make a difference in what's already going on.
Yeah.
And it's the whole mentality of it's a big problem and it's so well known. Like, why do I have to take that step? Like, and that's what it is.
And people who are stuck in the human trafficking, their life expectancy is like 7 years,
Yeah.
like at most. Like that's it.
Then they get exposed to all kinds of diseases and just not having those safe practices in place, you know. It's very dangerous. Either they're abused to death or they succumb to a disease. Or they starve,
They take their own
or
life if
drug
they have-
overdoses.
Where just like they were saying, it's normalized. So even after they're out of their situations, they still continue it. It's still health and wellness that they just don't believe.
And going back to the substance abuse, like I think that some substance users that going through treatment should be screened for human trafficking as
Because
well.
that could be part of it. That's part of how they trap them is drugs. They believe that's how they're gonna get what they need, and they're stuck like just physiologically they need it at that point. So they're stuck.
Yeah,
So
from
it's-
the punitive point, that's a huge part of it too, is kind of like, arresting and treating them like victims of this crime when, for prostituting and drug dealing and stuff, when the reality is that they, might be largely involved with human trafficking, like more like restorative
So
justice
then
Yeah.
the
approach.
laws have to change then. There has to be some gray area regarding that. Regarding this person's being taken in for drug possession or drug use. However, this is because of A, B, and C. And so I don't know if that has to do with,
There's
changing
fear in a
the
lot of
laws.
these people too, like,
Yes.
there's people who are controlling them like puppeteers, so they don't want to come
Right.
forward and say so and so, because they threaten their lives and their family
Yeah.
lives, and
Yeah.
it's just that they don't have the safety net where they
Right.
feel safe to, no one's gonna.
Their trust
Well,
in
that-
humanity and their attachment, their attachments to all that have been absolutely just smashed, damaged, brutalized, where they can't even trust themselves enough to trust other people.
And it's a culture in and of itself, if you think about it, because if you're taken as a very young child and you're raised in this way, that's part of your culture, that's part of who you are. So then to lose that, like the threat of losing that, is a huge barrier in and of its own. And there's a really strong need for counseling for them to be able to accept that.
Well, even like the ones that are like sold into it, it's not they're taken and sold into it. It's their families that are giving them up. So they go into it with the understanding that if they don't perform, bad things will happen to their families. It's just another like they're stuck. They don't try to get out of it, because if they do, bad things will happen to their families back home.
Psychological warfare at its very best, creating the very worst.
Very
You know,
eloquent.
and you have these people that, whether they're innately able to do this to people and not have a heart or any feeling, about treating someone who's considered, human, a brother, and you're gonna treat them like less than an animal. You treat your dog better than you treat this person. It's speechless. I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
I can't even wrap my head around it
It's
without
just
getting
like
choked up about it, so, yeah.
Yeah, it's all just. I think a very big portion of it is just education. For prevention. But I mean, even upon that, it's just the economical like the economics on top of that, like how people in other countries got into the situation where they thought selling off their children was the best option to get them out of that. And it's the people who,
option.
yeah, it's the people who run the whole thing. That's what they want. They want people to be desperate enough to do that willingly. So it's not just taking kids. It's easier for them. So it's just.
And yeah, there's some issues to address, like for example, I've read a little bit about foreign aid and how it impacts, and the most successful foreign aid is like microloans, so people within the community can start their own businesses rather than just handing out, blankets or whatever, like actually providing an infrastructure within that impoverished community that creates jobs and creates wealth and production of their own goods. And if a family has that structure of a regular job and regular income, they're not going to feel the need to, they feel like that their child will have a good future in that community.
So it's a culture perpetuating a culture of human trafficking.
Yeah.
And then it'll take a culture to perpetuate a culture from getting out of
Yes.
the human trafficking on a global united level, united front.
And all of this being said, I was really encouraged by the things that at least we were doing at the state level. Like they're looking to treat it as more of a public health issue rather than punitive. And I think they did have an understanding of like a lot of the things that needed to be done. And it's just, of course, easier said than done.
It's a resource question. Like, where are we going to get the funding for these programs? How are we going to provide training for these individuals and counseling? Like, all of that costs money.
Right. There, one of the things was there's a local organization who has all of that. Like they're 100% volunteer led, and they train all of their individuals to actually go into these situations and extract the victims from the situation, which I thought was like intense for a volunteer. But one of the things that the state is doing is looking to connect all of these different grassroots organizations that are doing all of these really great things, but they're of course only so powerful at the level that they're at. And I think if we can do that, if we can start building it up at the state level and then go up to national, we're going to have a lot more strength. We're going to see a lot more changes.
Right, a lot more.
Work our way up versus work our way down.
Right.
Yeah, it's almost like we need attorneys or something at the local level, like advocating for the rights of these traffic victims, and like businesses being able to provide like internships and job training, and even like on the local level to give them options and stuff. But
And there's celebrities that that have their own organizations. So if you have money coming from the everyday person, who can be a voice and people look up to and respect, that initiates, and then so it's all different. So there's so many different levels. Yes, we could turn to Hollywood for some help with, things like this to a point.
They owe us.
But if you have all this money and you have this time, and you might think, what am I going to do with myself? Look at the world. There's so many different things that money could.
For example,
Don't real men don't buy girls.
Right.
So he just definitely puts the word out there, and Justin Timberlake does it too, and they invest money in local organizations that help fight human trafficking.
And last year alone, his company, Ashton, and with his ex-wife Debbie, they removed 6,000 traffickees.
Wow.
And the limit was 5,000, so they excelled. And then I think it was like 3,500 of the traffickers that they brought to justice and all that stuff. So it's really making, he was on the Today Show talking about it, it's really making a difference. So if you have all these people doing this on this small scale, I know it's a small dent, but then, like you said, that expands.
Right. Combined effort.
Right, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it becomes the in thing to do, and that could facilitate even more
definitely in this society,
public
social
activity.
media,
But
and
that's-
looking
yeah.
to public figures like that.
But that's what it needs to become more common knowledge
Yes.
of what is and isn't okay, and like what needs to be done though. Because it's standalone incidences, people just don't react how they should.
Right.
So it's just,
Right.
it just needs to be more education, more across all platforms.
People should be able to like just how teachers are trained to identify child abuse. Like the average American should be trained to identify signs of somebody that's being taken advantage of or trafficked.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like there should be a high school course where it's just
Yeah.
like how to be a good human? Like,
Yeah.
like the things that like you
Yeah.
really should know, but it
Yeah.
just doesn't get covered.
High school, college, even in adulthood, we might need
Maybe-
reminders, you know, of these
Even if
things.
it's not to this, I mean, obviously to the scale of human trafficking, but even just common abuse or
Right.
like sexual predators, like they don't
Yes.
get that. They don't know how to react, and it's the same grooming process.
Yeah.
That just nobody knows,
Right.
and they just fall victim to it because they don't know. They don't know any better.
Right,
And it's
right.
that's what it needs to start.
Yeah, even for like my own awareness, I was watching a TED Talk and they had this group of girls and I think they all had like similar tattoos or branding, which was the signal that they all belong to the same trafficker. Which, you know, she was kind of saying in like her community, like if you see these girls, this is not a fashion statement. Like they are being trafficked and they rescue them. Like even just familiarizing yourself with things like that was new to me. Like I didn't even.
Because how
In
many
the
times
local
have you
area.
seen someone's tattoo and go, oh, that looks like, and I never thought like that could be something else. That could be.
Not to imply that everyone has a tattoo,
that
but
could
yeah.
be, well, I mean, but
Yeah.
everybody has tattoos, but what if it does look like a branding thing or something? The
Yeah.
an item when you go to,
A barcode.
thank you, a barcode. I mean, I don't think it'd be that literal, but it could be if they're not really
Their
smart
own
traffickers.
version,
Right,
yeah.
so to
You know,
show other
so-
people that they're already spoken for.
Right.
But even just knowing like the grooming process, a lot of it looks like just common dating is the issue. Is a lot of the very beginning steps is just common dating to kind of like lure them into the situation where they will be trapped. And a lot of those you can see in just a regular restaurant you go to, and just servers don't recognize it, other people who are there don't recognize it, but there are small signs that they're stuck or they're leading down that path. It's just it's all education to figure it out and to get them out before they're at that point.
And to make these reporting resources widely known.
Because nobody knows. They see it and they're like, but who do I tell?
Right.
How do I help them without making it worse?
I've seen like in local restaurants, like on the news and stuff, like they'll put something in the woman's bathroom
they'll
that
have
will
that.
say if you're in trouble, order this drink, or signs like that. So you're like sitting there and like the bartenders or whoever, like it's just very interesting, like subtle signs like that are there. Could save someone's life.
In my
Yeah.
church bathroom, there's the
Is
national
there?
trafficking
Yeah.
hotline and everything on there, and every time I walk out, I see it, and I'm like, wow.
Well, I love it because they have it in like bars or restaurants. Like order this drink and we'll call you a cab. Like just so they're not stuck.
Right.
Like
Wow.
I love that. That's
amazing.
great.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So future recommendations are
Education.
Education.
For sure.
education. Yeah.
Education, stronger border control in terms of identifying who's coming in, like what
Why
is
they're
their
coming in.
why they're coming in exactly. So if somebody comes in on a work permit, actually calling that employer versus just kind of taking it at face value, because that's how a lot of people get trafficked in is, oh, I'm going to work a job. And I mean, with labor, they are working some kind of job, but it's forced illegal labor. So we want to make sure to follow up with employers and say, are you hiring this person? How much are you hiring for them? Get all the details so it actually is legit, which, is hard given the resources, but,
Correct.
that's what our border patrol officers should be doing rather than, just kind
Keeping
of,
people out.
is
seeing
actually
why they're
looking
coming in.
into why.
Patrolling the border, perhaps.
Yeah.
And it makes them more desperate to find options that they can get in too, because they're more willing to go the route of willingly being trafficked.
And keeping track of, the actual traffickers, like who do they see frequently, like looking
There's
into that
patterns.
person,
It would be really interesting if they had interviewed somebody who worked at border control, because I don't know that
I couldn't
they
find
are
anything about
educated
I doubt they
on
have
this kind
any
of stuff.
training.
I mean, that's
No.
that's crazy, because like
And local police officers are. Like, there's education programs for police
why not?
officers. It's
Yeah.
identifying toolkit.
And that goes with education at all levels. Like it's not uniform, and that's the issue. is
Yeah.
It's not everywhere. It's not everyone, and that's where we fall short.
Not stopping on one end, it's just going to flow in the other one.
Has to be definitely a united effort on all levels, like education for the public, education for the victims in terms of giving them a way out, like not just removing them from the situation and then kind of leaving them to fend for themselves in the world without any real formal education or training. Like they're just gonna fall back into the same trap.
Right.
Versus giving them like a trade or a skill, you know, if they're literate, send them to college, like, you know.
And then education and rehabilitation of the
Yes.
consumers of the services.
Mhm.
Right.
Yep.
And of course, you know, rehabilitation for those that are traffickees. You
Yes,
know, and
to
there's,
get them
there's
back into-
extensive,
Yeah.
Support that they
rehabilitation,
need,
you
absolutely.
know, because they would need years and years of integration of therapy and just who knows what.
Yeah, I mean,
No,
going back to
in-
like Maslow's
Mhm.
hierarchy, like shelter,
Right.
food, security,
Right.
belonging, like, and then addressing all of their mental and emotional stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a huge feat.
Yeah, I mean, it's just how do we make this a pressing issue for the public? You know what I mean? Like we have
It's
this
starting to,
crazy
yeah.
stuff that's going on in our country, and we get so divided on it. And it's
But on the news,
how do you
I see
impress upon
local,
people that like this is like, because I feel like we're a relatively educated group of people on social justice issues, like being
Mhm.
social work students. But like as we were researching this, I don't know about you guys, but I was looking at something. Oh my god, I would have had no idea.
Yes.
I wouldn't have guessed. And so if you're thinking of that and then looking at like lay people, general population, like you gotta figure that the awareness is like far
Awareness
below
as
that
well.
even. So
people are really consumed into their immediate kind of focal
Right.
point
Yeah.
of their own shelter, survivor, you know,
Yeah,
food, other
absolutely,
their own
and rightly
Maslow's
so.
levels of
yeah,
of survival. So there might not be any time for the external, but watching the news, a couple months back, there was a 3-month-old that was taken out of a sex trafficking ring.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, that impacted me even before I even knew we were doing this project.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
I guess that's that advocacy part. of-
Yeah. Speaking up for
It
those who
starts
can't
with us,
speak for
yeah.
themselves.
I think that's the general message.
Yes.
Education.
End on that note.
Yes. Right. Cheers to that. Yes.
Nice job, lady.
Okay.